Homesteading doesn't have to be expensive. With the right strategies and mindset, you can live off the land and create a sustainable lifestyle without draining your bank account. In this episode, I will reveal my top tips for homesteading like a pro on a budget. Let's get growing. Hello and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast, the show that talks about growing a garden, a homestead, a healthy family, and most importantly, growing closer to God. I'm your host, Crystal Media, owner of the Red Ridge Farm Homestead, where our mission is to help women of faith find the courage to grow healthy food for their family while building a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior. If that's you, don't let the world hold you back. Pray Just Plant. Welcome, fellow growers, to the Pray Just Plant podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Media, and today in Season 10, Episode 6, we are going to dive into starting a homestead on a budget. Maybe you are tired of the fast-paced city life and looking to embrace a simpler, more sustainable lifestyle. Homesteading might be the answer you're searching for. However, a lot of us feel that getting into homesteading, we need to buy a bunch of land and it can be daunting and expensive. But in today's episode, I will share with you value tips on how to homestead like a pro without breaking the bank by prioritizing building your own structures, learning DIY, do it yourself, embracing a budget, and bartering, trading, and investing in quality tools. You can create a sustainable lifestyle that benefits you and the planet. So let's get started and explore these cost-effective strategies for successful homesteading. Our first topic is start small and prioritize. When it comes to homesteading, it's important to start small. Don't overwhelm yourself by taking on too much at once. Instead, focus on the essentials and gradually build from there. It's also helpful to prioritize tasks based on their importance and their urgency. This will ensure that you are making the most of your time, effort, and resources. I talk about this a lot when I talk about the Purposeful Growing Success Path. A lot of us think that we need to dive into a homestead and purchase land or have a big backyard, but the truth is that homesteading is essentially, sometimes it's just a lifestyle, and it's how we think about the world and how we think about how we purchase things or how we interact with the world. And through the Purposeful Growing Success Path, it's a path that describes pretty much how you can start growing your own food and how you can start the homestead and all of that. The first steps that you should be doing is just grow. That's the first stage. It's where you're finding out your goals. You're figuring out your why. You're trying to wrap your brain around this new lifestyle that you and your family want to start. And then you have the Purposeful Kitchen. This is a perfect place to start homesteading because guess what? You already have it. You already have a kitchen. You already have the tools that you need. You don't need to go buy extravagant things. You don't need to build that chicken coop just yet. But when you do, we're going to talk about that and how we can budget for that in a minute. But start where you are. Start small. I know on my growing journey and the reason I really developed the Purposeful Growing Success Path for you was because one, I jumped around a lot, but if I would have gone in a systematic way of doing this and then this and this, I would have been able to save myself quite a few failures. One of the biggest ways that I jumped into homesteading was I started a garden and my mother-in-law gave me 3 chickens. Starting a garden was amazing. The kids loved being out there. I had small toddlers. We had a great fun in the garden. But sadly to say, a lot of that garden produce went to waste because I didn't do one of the most fundamental things that all the growers should do, and that's learn how to cook with vegetables and cook with raw materials and cook from scratch and to meal plan and to prioritize doing things in the kitchen. And that's why that is my second stage of the successful growing path, because it is essential to every part of the growing journey. You starting this growing journey to grow good food for your family. Well, the first step to build that foundation is to learn how to cook good food so that your family will eat the good food. So sometimes as homesteaders or sometimes as people are jumping into this idea of homesteading, we think that we have to go to the growing first and we have to buy the land and we have to spend lots of money on learning how to do this or learning how to do that. But the truth is you can be starting small and right where you are in your kitchen. And the next stage is the purposeful home, where you're figuring out how to create peace and joy and connect with God in your home so that you can start finding that structure, finding that time in your schedule to grow a garden and to expand out there. And we're even going to talk about in the home is budgeting, right? So this episode is perfect for that stage because you're learning how to, we're going to talk about budgeting in a little bit, how to think about saving money on this journey, because we don't want to venture into something that is going to cause stress because it costs too much money. Another way to start small and prioritize is by building your own structures. This not only saves you money, but also allows you to customize your homestead to fit your specific needs and preferences. Whether it's a chicken coop or a greenhouse, you can find a do-it-yourself plans and tutorial online. I've even wrote a book. It's called Red Ridge Farm Builds book, and it goes through the structures that we have built here on the homestead that don't look like anybody else's, because I have formulated them from different ideas from others, different other DIY plans to fit our homestead and also to fit permaculture principles. So I will put the link to that book in the show notes and the description below. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those subjects in a minute. Another way to start small and to prioritize is to focus on where you're at in your growing journey before adding too much at once. We as humans want to jump in feet first and do everything. That's where it comes in to starting small. But this can lead to overwhelm, especially in the pocketbook if we want to grow the garden, add the dairy goats, add the rainwater system to the back of the house all in 1 year. We need to, especially when it comes to purchasing land or even animals, before you are ready, can lead to what Joel Salatin calls buying the idea but not embracing the lifestyle. Homesteading can be an expensive lifestyle if we bring city values to the farm. And city values are where we want everything and we can get that instant gratification, right? But on the farm, on the homestead, when it comes to growing food and animals that are not in our control, we want them to be in our control, but it can be expensive if we don't take the steps that we need to succeed. And as I explained before, that is why I think this life needs fundamental skills, which can be learned right where you are without a large amount of money investment. Through the Purposeful Growing Success Path, I've outlined each stage that growers can take action on each step and know exactly what they need before moving on to the next step. I know personally in my growing journey, I tried to do too many things at once, and I tried to move up and down these stages way too fast before I was ready. And that cost me money. That cost me time. That cost me. Yes, I learned all of those things, but by not taking it step by step and moving forward step by step, I lost momentum sometimes. I found stress, I found overwhelm, and more. So going through this path, or better yet, finding where you are on this path, will help you save, because then you will prioritize what you can do now and not spend money on skills or even animals you're not ready for. And starting small by focusing on what you are ready to learn and not wasting money on extravagant things that can become a money pit if not managed with a homesteading mindset. As I said before, homesteading is not necessarily having the land and all of the things. It's having that homesteading mindset that we have to grow with nature. Permaculture principles say that nature is very slow and that it's okay to grow slowly. So be sure to check out the Purposeful Growing Success Path. I have a web page all set up for you where you can jump over there, find out where you are in the growing journey, find out the next steps that you can take next, or how you can even flush out the stage that you're in right now. Another way that we kind of discussed about it before in prioritizing and keeping small is to build your own structures. With the right tools and materials, you can construct a variety of buildings such as chicken coops or a greenhouse without having to hire expensive contractors, or you can also repurpose. Building structures yourself also allows for customization and flexibility in design. You can choose the size, the shape, the materials that best fit your needs and budget. And additionally, like I said, you can recycle materials. But here on the homestead, I've recycled buildings. So my husband is a sales contractor at a lumber store, and a couple bought a shed. It was a 12 by 16 shed, and we were thinking about building a chicken coop, and we were looking at the prices of materials and what it would take to build this chicken coop and also build a shed for my garden because I needed something to keep my rototiller in and so on and so forth. Well, it just happened that this couple bought this shed, and as it was being delivered, it fell off of the truck. My husband wasn't involved in the delivering at all. It was the delivering from the manufacturer to my husband's store, and it fell off the truck. And the couple no longer wanted it because they worried about certain problems inside, which there were problems, but we looked at it, both the size of it was way bigger than what we thought we needed for a chicken coop or for a garden shed. But after we started thinking about it, we thought, well, we can repurpose this and actually put the chicken house in the back of it and the garden shed in the front of it. So we repaired, cost us a lot less than buying a full manufactured shed. We used recycled materials that we had on the homestead to repair the shed because knowing those skills, like the couple, they didn't know the skills, so they completely just didn't want to deal with it at all. Knowing those different skills helped us repurpose that chicken shed, or what we call now the chicken shed. It's actually a shed that would have been a lot more expensive if we weren't ready to wing it or ready to do the things that we needed to do, physical labor on our side, to reduce the expenses for ourselves. Because by learning those basic carpentry skills, it empowered us to make those repairs that we needed. And you can learn those skills very easily. It may take some trial and error, but with patience and practice, you can become a pro at building your own structures. And in fact, in that book that I talked about before, yes, I described the structures with you, but I also describe how you can teach your kids to build alongside you. And some of those tips are getting books from the library. They have, like back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, they wrote physical books for homeowners that walk through every step of like how to fix a sink and how to do this and how to build your own trusses and how to do whatever you want to do in the construction area. And they lay it out with beautiful pictures, and it's very descriptive, and it can walk you through step by step. And the library is a free resource. In fact, the goat barn that we built our own trusses. My husband was just showing our brother-in-law the goat barn the other day, and he was talking about how we built our own trusses, and that was a lot cheaper than having to have another company build those trusses for us for the building that we did. And the base of our goat house is railroad ties that we got from the railroad for $5 a piece. They were changing out the railroad system, those ties on the bottom. The sides, we did go ahead and buy some lumber, but when we did buy lumber, when we were at the lumber store, we asked for their coal lumber. That means that some of them were a little more bent or askew, but we worked with that because we knew that we could make it work. So just be thinking of some other ways that you could build your own structures or recycle structures. You can go on Facebook or Craigslist and look for people that are getting rid of old sheds or old buildings or all of those types of things. And then you don't have to even hardly build anything. You can just reformat them. And that comes to also when you're buying land, think about the land that you can purchase with outbuildings already on them. And as Joel Salatin says, that if you're going to build anything, make it movable. Put it on skids so you can move that building anywhere. And I do want to say a quick side note. I do have a lot of these quick side notes, but if you're going to be investing in animals, and I have pretty much a whole blog post on this topic, if you're going to be investing in animals on your homestead, be sure that you are building your structures first. Don't go look at those cute animals. Don't go look at those cute goats until you have your structure built first, and have a little bit of reality of how many can I get? How many can my property handle? How big a structure do I need to build if I'm going to get 5 goats? Think about that first. So then you're going to save money because you're going to, one, the animal's going to come home and they're going to be safe and secure in their little barn or in their shelter or in their pen, and you're going to have peace of mind, and they're not going to get out on you on the road. They're not going to run off. That's going to save money. The animal's not going to get hurt. But you're also going to figure out your limitations and how that structure will function on your property before you get the animals. So building and mastering skills with your hands can create self-sufficiency, sustainability, and a sustainable homestead that provides for your family and promotes a deeper connection with the natural world. And we're going to get into the next tip in just a moment, but now it is time for the tips and tricks of this episode, where I share a few seasonal tips and tricks that you could be using on your homestead because I use them here at Red Ridge Farmstead. This week's tip is brought to you by the Red Ridge Farms Builds ebook. This ebook was designed to help you get building on the homestead and even designing your homestead with permaculture principles. Grab your copy by going to www.redridgefarm.org/getbuilding or click on the link in the description below. This week, our tip is about water. So especially here in Wyoming, we get a lot of rain in the spring. And as the season moves forward, we get a little bit less rain. But one of the greatest tools that I have found, and you can even use this when you're watering your garden or watering your homestead or watering your trees, is a rain gauge. Knowing how much moisture is rained down on your property or how much moisture is rained down on your garden from maybe a sprinkler that you're using, it will help you monitor your water intake and make sure that your plants don't get waterlogged, or you make sure that your plants are getting the proper amount of water. And a rain gauge is great for that. In a garden, vegetables need about an inch of moisture a week, and you can keep track of how much rain is accumulated through the week by the use of a rain gauge. Now, a rain gauge can be anything. You can go to the grocery store or the big box store and buy a rain gauge, or it can be a simple cup that you have measured or wrote measures on the side to signify an inch, half inch, quarter inch of moisture that has accumulated. So my tip for you this week, when you are out watering your garden or thinking about how much rain or thinking about even collecting rain on your homestead, invest in a rain gauge so that you can see if collecting rain or starting or building a rain water system is for you. So here we are back to talking about saving money on the homestead and things that we can do about or on your homesteading journey that will not break the bank. And sometimes we discuss learning those basic carpentry skills can be empowering and satisfying. And you don't have to break the bank when it comes to structures either. Like I said, we repurpose that shed. You don't have to do everything from scratch. I talked about the library books and much more, but there's other ways that you can build stuff with the art of DIY. That's do-it-yourself homesteading. Homesteading isn't just about living off the land. It's also about creating a more sufficient lifestyle that can save you money and reduce the environmental impact. By mastering skills like gardening, food preserving, and animal husbandry, you can create a sustainable homestead that provides for your family and connects you with the natural world. One way to start learning these skills is to turn to online resources. You're listening to this podcast episode right now because that's what you're yearning to do. But there's other resources out there, YouTube, videos, forums, that can definitely walk you through the DIY builds, including my book, The Red Ridge Farm Builds ebook. Inside, you'll find the DIYs, like I said before, that we use here on the homestead. I also go into detail on how to get your kids building right alongside with you. There's countless homesteading experts out there that are eager to share their knowledge and expertise with you. And I'm sure there's even some local carpenters that would be willing to work right alongside with you in doing little projects. And reach out to resources. I know my father is a contractor or was in his earlier years, so he knows a lot about carpentry. So I reach out to him for a lot of my DIY questions. Find a community around you. there's other homesteaders that may have skills that you may not have, and connect with them as well. Self-sufficient doesn't mean completely you have to do everything. Self-sufficient just means that we're breaking away from the systems that are creating things. So if we can break away from that, but reach out to a fellow homesteader, that's not denying self-sufficiency. That's you going out and finding a connection with someone, yourself, and finding the answer. It's not you relying on a system to provide you the answer. That's personally what I think self-sufficiency is. And I personally think that homesteaders shouldn't be going for self-sufficiency, but community sufficiency. The grocery stores have only been around for less than 100 years. There was community before the systems. We just need to go back to that. Homesteading is us going back to that. And sometimes we forget that homesteading is not just going partly into the old time things. There's modern homesteading, but it's also into that lifestyle and connecting with others who are doing the same as we are. Now, the next topic is embracing a budget. I struggled with this for so many years. My husband is a saver. He wanted a budget. I didn't grow up that way. I wasn't taught how to handle money that way. But if you're going to continue on your homesteading journey or any journey, I personally think you need to create a budget. For years, I fought this part of my life. I never thought a budget was for me, but it wasn't until I sat down and read a book that changed my life. I'm going to be doing a podcast episode all about this book very soon. It basically stated the opposite of what I believed. I believed that a budget was there to order me around, but it's not. It's the opposite of that. A budget was instead a way for me to spend more money on the things I wanted to do, like homesteading, because a budget is where you tell your money what to do, not the other way around. See, for so many years, that's the way I felt that it was. It was a restriction. It was me putting things in a little bit of box, and I couldn't go and do this, and I couldn't go and do that. But in actuality, should be the opposite of me telling my money what I want to do, or me telling myself that if I go do this, I rob this. So for example, one of the big things that we always struggled with was eating out. It was up to me to try to figure out, we had $100 budget, and we'd be in town, be like, okay, well, it's time to eat. Should we wait the hour and go home and eat when we get home, or should we just eat now? And of course the kids would pipe up, oh, let's eat now. I want to go here. I want to go there. And my husband would look at me and say, okay, well, how much money do we have in the budget? And I'd say, I don't know. And we would go and to me personally, I didn't really care how much was in the budget. So I was like, okay, well, let's go out to eat. So we'd go out to eat. But after reading that book, what I figured out was that every time we went out to eat and we're beyond our budget, we had to take that money from somewhere. It wasn't that we had extra money up our sleeves. What that meant is if we went over our budget in eating out, then we had to take money from our homesteading fund, or we had to take money from other funds that I really wanted money in. Creating a life away from the norm can seem like a scary idea, especially when it comes to spending money before you are confident that all of your bills are going to be taken care of. I promise you, you don't need this extra stress. A budget is going to set up boundaries for your spending, so you will first pay the bills that you need to pay, that you'll set aside money for any emergencies, medical savings, clothing, dentist, save for the college or retirement, and then set up your savings or accounting for your dream homestead. When you do this, you can bring peace of mind to this new adventure instead of worry and overwhelm. A budget is also going to not per se limit your spending, but it will help you choose the projects you are ready for by the amount of money you have set aside for it. So for example, I've been dreaming about building an in-ground greenhouse on the back of our property. And it's been 5 years in the making because it's taken us that much to save up the money for the project. Well, we were planning to build in 2020. And then, of course, you know what happened in 2020. But the other side of that is that construction and lumber prices skyrocketed. They went almost 3 times as much as they are now. And well, they're still high actually now, but they're not as much as they were that year in 2020. So by having a budget of, say, I think it was going to be like $2,300 for us to build this greenhouse. We had the money saved up. We even had an extra $500 just in case some extra costs came up, in case when we made the budget for the build, that just in case we had a little bit of influx in price. Well, we had a huge influx in price and it was beyond our budget. So I still don't have that greenhouse that I wanted because the prices are still pretty high and we are still saving money for it. But what we finally decided is that we would do other projects that cost a little bit less. And we did a few other additional projects, and because we went off what money we had set aside. Embracing a budget can also have a positive impact on your finances. By telling your money what needs to be done for you, you can put money towards investments that will benefit your homestead in the long run, such as solar panels, rainwater harvesting systems, or livestock, because you are in charge of your money. Sometimes it's really easy to be like, well, we have to pay the bills and we have to do this, and we don't want to spend any money because we want to make sure that we have all the money that we need. But by creating a budget, what you can do is you can build savings accounts. You can fill those first so that you and your husband are going to feel more relaxed going into this venture of homesteading, because you know that the other things are going to be taken care of. I know when my husband and I first got married, the things that we focused on were buying food and paying the bills. But as we had kids and our household grew, we needed to focus in on a clothing budget. We needed to have, $300. So if the kids needed new snow boots set in fall, we could go purchase them. Or if they needed new running shoes in the spring, we could go purchase them. And we just always made sure that budget always had a maximum of $300, and that you can do that. You can make little pieces. We have an emergency budget. We have a medical savings budget. We have a clothing budget, a dentist budget. We have eye care budget because we don't have eye care insurance. We have other budgets that we fill up first, and then if there's extra money, that goes towards our house budget where we're still remodeling at our house. It goes to our homestead budget where we can purchase homestead things. We also have our homeschool budget that also needs to be filled up so we can buy books for our kids every year, and it creates peace of mind. I struggled with a budget for so many years, and I wish I would have done the steps I needed to long before, because one, it created so much more peace of mind. As you manage your finances and focus on what truly matters, you may find yourself wondering why you never did this to start with, just like me. So to learn more about this topic, jump over to the homemaker's stage, the purposeful homemaker stage of the Purposeful Growing Success Path. Because in that stage, I talk about this step of how we can create that peaceful, joyful home and finances are part of that can create peace of mind, how we can feel at home, how we can get a cleaning schedule figured out, all of that kind of stuff, so we can invite people over and we're not sit there stressed and worried about the state of our home, worried about the finances, worried about the grocery bill, the grocery this, and all the repair of our home and all of those things, because we get a few systems in place and it creates joy and peace. So I will put the link to that webpage so you can go access the Purposeful Growing Success Path, and you can dive into those different stages of the purposeful growing life. So we are going to get to more aspects about money and how we can save money or even not even use money to get things in just a moment. But now it is time for the Growing with God segment of this episode, where you and I dive into the Bible and learn more about our Lord and Savior. This week, we're continuing our series on faith in action by reading Hebrews. We're going to be reading Hebrews 11:17 through 19. We've already covered 1 through 16. If you'd like to hear that Bible study or those little Bible study snippets, be sure to check out the previous episodes starting this year, January 2023. I believe they're in season 9 and in currently now season 10. I hope to be making a group of these all in one post. Once we get through this Bible study, I'm going to create a single blog post or a single episode with all of these streamed together so that we can have this full Bible study as one conclusive Bible study. So let's read, and if you would like to read along with me, I'm reading out of the NIV translation. Let's read Hebrews 11, 17 through 19. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promise was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. That is an interesting story, isn't it? About Isaac and how God had promised him. I mean, we listened about how Sarah had doubt that she would become pregnant because she was so old, and that Abraham himself wasn't sure how he was going to bear a son. He was also in the old age. He thought that that was past, but God had promised that he would give him a nation. That was his gift for following his and obeying God, leaving everything behind. So I'm going to be reading the verses in Genesis about this instance where Abraham is asked to sacrifice his son. This is in Genesis 22. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded up his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar and on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it to the burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off towards Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Isn't that an interesting story of Abraham? So God has asked Abraham to do several things for him. He's asked him to leave his people, to leave his family, not his immediate family, but to leave all others, to leave all the connections. He's already an old man, so he has lots of connections, and to go to a foreign land. And God promises him that once he follows those instructions by leaving Lot, he promises him a nation. And in a way, in that story also, Abraham is shocked. He's like, "I don't have any kids. How is this going to happen?" So in a way, God had to retest his faith, because Abraham and both Sarah, as we talked about before, didn't trust fully that they could have children. Yes, they trusted that God would fulfill the promise, but they didn't know how. And when it came down to them having a child, they didn't think that was the possible way. He didn't understand it because he was old. He was past the age, and Sarah was definitely past the age of bearing a child. But the Lord said it would happen. And I think in a little bit, this is why Abraham is retested, to confirm his faith. So Abraham knew after the birth of his son that God was going to fulfill that promise. And now God was asking him to take his son and sacrifice him, essentially kill him. But what does Abraham say to his son when he asks him where the sacrifice is? Does he sit there and say, "You are the sacrifice"? No, he says, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." God is going to provide it. And essentially, that's what he thought was going to happen, that God would provide. God said he was going to do something, and he still believed it. He didn't understand why he was being taken to the top of this mountain, why he was being asked to sacrifice his son, but he knew that God would still somehow fix it. And that, in fact, in Hebrews says that he probably thought that God would just bring his son back to life after he slayed him, because he was sure that God would give the promise that he said he would give, and that he could do anything to make that promise come true, even bring his son back to life. Then Abraham, on the verge of taking his son, when an angel stops him, he says to wait. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God. Now, in this instance, fear doesn't mean afraid. It means respect. It means that he believes that God's going to do what he says he's going to do. And so then he gives the promise again. I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sands on the seashore. We can rest in this faith also. We can rest in the assurance that God is going to fulfill his promises. But we also have to do our side. God is asking us to obey. God is asking us to step out in obedience even when we don't understand. Because faith is believing in what we cannot see, even when we don't understand how it's going to happen. We don't know the path that God has for you and me, except for the one path of eternal glory with him. And when we can rest in that path that God is going to take care of us, when we believe in Jesus, when we believe that he came to earth, was God, died on the cross, covered our sins, and rose again, when we believe that, John 3:16 says that we will have eternal life. And that's when we need to be obedient and step out in faith. Sometimes stepping out in faith is reading your Bible every day, but sometimes it's God asking you to do something. Maybe calling that neighbor to check on them, or stepping out and just speaking to others about him. You may not understand why God is asking you to do what he's asking you to do, but there is a reason. And everything God asks you to do is for your good. You may not understand it. You may not understand how it possibly could be, but in the end, it always will be. So I want you to remember this week that through faith, through believing in what we cannot see, we have eternal glory. And when we step out in faith in action, that is us stepping out in doing and obeying, even though we don't understand why. Let's talk a little bit more about saving money. And one great way to save money is by not using money at all to get the things that we need. And that's with bartering and trading. By embracing the ethos of homesteading, or that homesteading lifestyle, you'll find yourself more willing to engage with the community on a deeper level. Remember how we talked about that? Community sufficiency, not self-sufficiency. We can create connections through the exchange of goods and services. Trading and bartering can be a way to build strong relationship with neighbors and fellow homesteaders, providing a mutual beneficial environment for all. Such relationships can be particularly beneficial when it comes to acquiring the tools and equipment essential to homesteading. By trading with others, you may be able to obtain vital equipment at the fraction of the cost, or collaborating with the community can also lead to sharing tool ownership, which can greatly reduce expenses while still ensuring that everyone has the access to necessary tools. This is again looking at our past, looking at how they did it. I believe in time education bartering. What I mean by that is, for years, I worked for a local market gardener for pennies. She paid me very little. And sometimes I went out there for free just because I wanted to learn the skills and the knowledge from her on how to grow a better garden. Is there someone in your community that can use your helping hand that you can also learn something new from? There's that side of bartering as well, and trading. Maybe you are struggling to grow your big, huge garden, and you think that maybe if you had just a little bit of help, you could get a few things done? Well, ask your community around you. Maybe there is a young person who wants to start homesteading or growing their own food, but they're not sure if that lifestyle is for them. Reach out to them. Maybe they want to come and learn from you and see what it's like, walk through your garden, learn a few things, and then you can get that help. I personally, this year with a local farmer, hay prices have been extreme here in Wyoming because of the past 7 years of drought, which this winter has really broke that drought. But one of the things I did was I tied up with a local farmer. He raises sheep. I raise dairy goats. And he wanted milk for his lambs in the spring. So I traded him hay straight across for milk. I put in my freezer. I get up to about 10 gallons of milk. I call him up and say, hey, I'm ready for 10 bales of hay. That's pretty much the prices of hay right now. Of course, it was good, really good quality alfalfa hay for my dairy girls. They get the best because what they eat is technically what I eat. So they get the best. And I provided that gentleman with the supply of milk that he would need for his bum lambs so that he didn't have to go to the farm store and buy milk replacer. And milk replacer is very expensive. He actually thought that buying my milk was cheaper than buying the replacer. So he thought it was an amazing trade. He felt that he was actually saving money, and I felt like I was getting a very good high quality product for my very good high quality milk. So it was a great trade on both sides. And what about borrowing equipment? My father has an excavator. He's come over and done quite a few projects, and I just pay for his fuel, and I make him a really good homegrown from scratch meal as his payment. I'm sure there's other people out there that you can reach out to that can help you on your growing journey. Remember, community sufficiency, not self-sufficiency. And bartering and trading can be twofold in so many different ways. I have traded soap for my milk because there was a lady that made really good goat soap. I actually traded her the milk and she made me goat soap from my own goat milk, and that was how I paid for things. I've also traded another person for hay, for eggs. I've also traded a person down the road for apples, and in that situation, I went and helped her weed her garden 2 or 3 times, and she paid me in apples. There's just so many different ways that you can barter and trade. And in this day and age, we think that everything has to be monetary. Everything has to have cash, which is hardly used anymore, but that cash has to be exchanged, and it doesn't. There's so many different ways that you can do things. In fact, I think this year I'm going over to help castrate some pigs, and I'm getting a piglet out of it. So there's so many ways that you can barter and trade. And think about other ways that people can come help you, and then you could pay them with trade. Maybe you need help like the old barn raisings. You're ready to put up that structure, but you just need a few more hands. Invite everybody over for a picnic or a barbecue, put up that structure, and you've paid them with a good home-cooked meal. Now, bartering and trading is important. When it comes to using someone else's equipment, it's nice. But sometimes we need to buy our own equipment, especially when it comes to like chainsaws or tractors. So it's important to invest in quality items that will last. These tools can be costly up front, but their longevity and effectiveness will ultimately save you money in the long run. By being smart with your purchases and utilizing the support of your community, your homesteading journey can be both self-sustaining and affordable. Investing in quality tools is a key aspect of homesteading like a pro. Cheaper tools may seem like a good idea at first, but they often break down or wear out quickly, leading you to spend more money in the long run. On the other hand, high-quality tools are built to last, meaning you won't need to replace them as frequently. Additionally, quality tools tend to perform better, making your homesteading tasks easier and more efficient. When it comes to purchasing tools, it's important to do your research and read reviews to find the best options for your needs. Looking for reputable brands and models with good warranties to ensure you're getting a high-quality product. It may be tempting to skip on tools to save money. In the long run, investing in quality equipment will save you money and make your homesteading journey more enjoyable. With the right tools and a supportive community, you can homestead like a pro without breaking the bank. Being smart with your purchases and collaborating with others, you can make your homesteading dreams a reality. And if you think about it, why do you have to buy new? If you are purchasing a product that is of high quality, but maybe someone has used it for 10 years, that doesn't mean that the life of that product or that tool is done. It just means that that person is done with the tool. They no longer need it. They've graduated out of it. Maybe they've gotten rid of all the trees on the property, or maybe they don't cut down trees anymore. So it's perfectly fine, but still research the brand, make sure it's a quality brand, ask the previous owner how long they've had it, ask them how well they took care of it, inspect it for yourself. Don't just buy off Facebook or Craigslist without seeing something, because you're still spending money. But it's going to be okay to invest in high quality products even though they're a few years old. My rototiller, when I used to till, which I don't hardly till anymore, I got from a gardener who was retiring. They said, well, we don't want to rototill anymore. We converted our garden all over to raised beds, so we don't need this rototiller anymore. And so I bought it for like $20. So there's easier ways to get things. Go to old auction sales. That's a great way to get good quality tools, because sadly, a lot of the good quality tools are not being built in this day and age. You have to look really hard to find them. And sometimes finding older tools that are high quality will still help you not break the bank. So homesteading can sound daunting, especially when you consider the potential costs. But with some careful planning, resourcefulness, you can create a self-sustaining, fulfilling lifestyle without breaking the bank. The tips for starting small, building your own structures, learning to DIY, bracing a budget, bartering and trading, investing in quality tools can help you get started. Remember that every step you take towards a self-sufficient, community-sufficient lifestyle is a step towards a better future for yourself, your community, and the planet. So take action today and start living the homesteading dream. As a famous homesteader, Helen Nearing, once said, "The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it." So I want to thank you for joining me in this episode of the Pray Just Plant podcast. You don't have to break the bank to be a homesteader. In fact, the homesteading lifestyle is all about saving money. And don't forget to do a budget. Even if you're not homesteading and you just happen upon this episode, a budget is so important. I know I didn't believe that, but I believe it now. It is so important. The things that we've done in the past 5 years because of a budget are just amazing. We just took a trip to Hawaii as a family because of a budget. I want to thank you for joining me here at the Pray Just Plant podcast. And as always, don't let the world hold you back. Pray Just Plant.